Hello, Higher Modern Studies, and welcome to your next section, the USA topic, which is section number 3, looking at socio-economic inequality and its impact on a specific group in the USA. So that's what's called the first two sections now on the USA. So this next section looks at the socio-economic inequality in the USA that exists and its impact on a specific group. Now, in this section, we will look at the impact on ethnic minorities as our specific group. Now, in particular, the ethnic minorities that we'll focus on is African Americans and Hispanic Americans. Now, we'll look at the inequalities that they face in the following areas. So you've got economic inequalities, inequalities in education, health inequalities, immigration and its links to inequalities, and inequalities in terms of crime in the USA. Now, when it comes to writing your essay for this, which we'll obviously discuss near the time as well, in the first half of your paragraph, for example, you could discuss economic inequalities that African Americans and Hispanics may face. In the second half of your paragraph, you could speak about the inequalities in education that they might face. There's different ways to structure your essay when it comes to doing this. This is a slightly larger section due to all the inequalities that the ethnic groups face. So we'll break this down to two parts. So today we're going to focus on economic inequalities and inequalities in education. Then next week we'll look at health inequalities, immigration and inequalities in terms of crime. Now, in particular, the two groups that suffer inequalities that I've just mentioned that we will focus on are African Americans and Hispanic Americans. That is the two main groups that we'll focus on, in particular African Americans. But African Americans and Hispanic Americans, we'll discuss both of them. Now, we'll start with economic inequalities. Now, where does the USA sit? Now, the Gini coefficient, which is a measure of income inequality, where 0 represents complete equality and 1 represents complete inequality. Now, in 2018, the OECD ranked the USA's Gini coefficient as 0.39. Now, this is seen as dangerously high and compares poorly with countries like Germany, that sits at 0.29, Norway 0.26, and Slovakia at 0.24. The UK itself sits at 0.34. So why is the United States so unequal? Now, the issue in America. The USA is one of the most affluent countries in the world. Now, it's got a leading system of higher education, probably the most famous and most well-known universities in the world, with like Harvard and Yale, for example, are in America. Now, it is also the world's most industrialised country, but the USA has one of the most uneven distributions of wealth across the world. Now, Americans face inequalities, and the gap between rich and poor is not only widening, but is also starting to affect other social and economic factors in America. Now, in 2019, Gabrielle Zucman, who's an economics professor at the University of California, declared that US wealth concentration seems to have returned to levels last seen during the Roaring Twenties, so we're going back to the 1920s, where the top 0.1% richest adults' share of total household wealth is close to 25%. Now, the high concentration is similar to that in China and Russia, so ultimately the gap between rich and poor is actually widening even further. Now, if you think as well about the richest people in America, you might recognise some of the people on the screen here. Some of the richest people in America, like Mark Zuckerberg, for example, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, they are all billionaires. So some of the richest people in the world actually come from America. Now, if you think about where are the millionaires, now this is the figure in thousands here. So this shows you, in terms of major countries across the world, that the United States by far has the most millionaires in it in any other country in the world. So there's thousands of millionaires in the USA. However, it is also one of the most unequal countries in the world as well. Now, this is how across US counties, how it varies in terms of prosperity. So you've got the lighter colour is the least prosperous down to the darker colour, which is the most prosperous, and you can see that across America there is a picture of wealth, lots and lots of prosperity, but also extreme poverty as well. Particularly towards eastern central America, you'll see there that there isn't a lot of prosperity. That's where you find a lot of the poorer counties, but in the north in particular is where you find more prosperous areas. Now, if you think about the average yearly income for certain groups of Americans, now, white Americans on average earn around about $68,000 a year. You've then got African Americans that earn around $40,000 a year, Hispanic Americans that earn around $50,000 a year, and then you've got Asian Americans that earn around $81,000 a year. So you can see the two groups mostly affected by this are African Americans and Hispanic Americans, who on average earn less than their counterparts. Now, there's also been the growth of the super rich in the USA, as we've discussed. So, one of the first tasks that I'd like you to do is, using your mobile phones or the internet, go onto the Forbes rich list. Now, I want you to look at the top 20 richest people in the world and try and look at how many are Americans. You could actually filter this on your phone or on your laptop. I want you to try and write down at least 5 Americans who are in the top 30 richest people in the world, what their source of wealth is and how much they are actually worth. And this is just to let you see how much America does dominate in terms of wealth. The next task, if you look at the sections on page 22 of the booklet, I've also uploaded these via the assignment tab as well. What you're looking to do is fill in the section on page 22 using the graphs to help you. So look at what these graphs are showing us. So you've got their poverty in the USA and employment in the USA. So you've got poverty rates of ethnic groups, so think about Latinos, blacks there, poverty rates of men and women, so think about how that differs, and poverty rates of LGBT and non-LGBT people. Also, if you look at unemployment rates in the USA, again, try and note down what the unemployment rates are of the ethnic groups and the rates of men, women, and LGBT and non-LGBT people. So if you want to pause the video at this point to complete this task here. Now, also thinking about unemployment rate, the effect of COVID on African Americans is actually being a lot worse compared to other ethnic groups as well. So you can see here African American unemployment rate. So from 2010, it's been steadily going down, and you can see here when Trump enters the White House, in terms of, although the rate did go down, it did fluctuate a wee bit, but it was starting to go on a downwards trend. Then obviously we had the effect of the global pandemic of COVID, and you can see there how African American unemployment rate has shot right up. Now, one of the main reasons for that, same in the UK, is one of the main areas affected by the COVID-19 pandemic has been the catering industry, and what we'll find out is a lot of African Americans actually have jobs in the catering industry. So that has led to, or is one of the contributing factors to high unemployment for African Americans as well. Okay, so first main activity that we're looking at today, so we're looking at economic inequalities in the USA. So you're looking to take the heading economic inequalities in the USA, explain which groups are more likely to suffer economic inequalities in the USA, try and give evidence to back up your argument, and why do you think certain groups suffer economic inequalities compared to others. Again, you've got the worksheets there to help you to complete this. So if you want to pause the video at this point so you can do this task. Okay, what we're looking at next now, we've looked at economic inequality, so how certain ethnic groups earn less than others in the USA, in particular how African Americans and Hispanics earn less than white Americans or Asian Americans, but also how they're affected in terms of unemployment and poverty as well. Now, what we're looking at next is educational inequalities in the USA. Now, this is just a flat fill on the education system in the USA. You don't need to write this down, this is just to let you see what the education system is like in the USA. Now, US parents are given the option to send their children to a public school, which is a typical state-run or funded school. And according to the National Centre for Educational Statistics, the majority of young people attend a public school in the USA. Charter schools are publicly funded but are not operated by local school districts. Now, they operate the same free education open admissions as public schools. So, for example, entrance is not determined by test results, but their charter, so the legally binding contract under which they operate, means they may follow different rules, such as running longer school terms or being able to hire uncertified teachers. So they have a bit more leniency in terms of what they can do. You also have the private school option in America, so private school is an option for parents who are able to pay fees for their children to receive an education. Now, private schools offer students a range of experiences as they are predominantly funded through tuition fees, just like schools in the UK that are private. Students are taught in smaller classes, benefit from better technology, and tend to show high attainment levels. Now, previously, most private schools were Catholic, but they did accept students of all religious backgrounds. But today, more and more have no religious affiliation at all, so they're just private schools. Some states have a high number of homeschool children as well. Now, generally, states and taxes fund public schools, and this leads to inequalities across the country. So, affluent states that are maybe able to make more money from their citizens, they're able to then spend more per head than poorer states. Now, some states may prioritise other spending areas over education as well. Now, Vermont spends approximately $20,000 per student per year to fund their schools, whereas Utah spends less than half of this per student. So this shows you how states can differentiate in terms of their spending. The students who are fortunate to live in more affluent areas will benefit from the higher proportions of funds that are given to schools. Now, this could lead to a better life with a higher educational attainment and better employment opportunities in the future. Now, educational attainment differs between ethnic groups as a result of location, public or private education, and language barriers. Now, the number of students in each type of education in 2018 was as follows. So public schools there was 50.7 million, 2.8 million were in charter schools, 5.8 million in private schools, and 1.6 million in homeschool. Now in 2016, the NCES also recorded that it was the first year that the majority of public school children were from minority ethnic groups. So that meant that white students now accounted for less than half of the students who attended public schools. Now public schools differ in terms of funding and graduation statistics depending on their location. White students tend to be concentrated in suburban and rural areas, whereas students from minority ethnic backgrounds tend to attend schools in cities and towns. Now charter schools have a higher ratio of students from minority ethnic backgrounds, because remember, charter schools can hire teachers that maybe aren't as qualified as other schools. This table here shows you the attendance at public, charter, Catholic, private and non-religious private schools by ethnicity. So we've got here public schools, so as we mentioned there, white Americans 48.9%, Hispanic and Latino make up nearly 26%, Black 15.5%, Asian/Pacific Islander 6%, and Native Americans 1%. Then we've got the charter schools there, so 63% white, 27% Hispanic Latino, 32% Black, 4% Asian Pacific Islander, and then 1% Native American. Then Catholic private schools. Now Catholic private schools and non-religious private school, this is where you really need to pay attention here to the statistics, because this shows you how this differentiates. You see that in terms of the students that attend Catholic private schools, 66% of them are white. The students that attend non-religious private schools, 65% of them are white. And if you look further down, Hispanic, Latino and Black have a lot lower rates of children attending those private schools. So that shows you again that white American children are benefiting more from private schooling than ethnic minority groups. Now American university as well. According to the World University Rankings, the USA is one of the most popular countries for higher education and also one of the most expensive. Now tuition fees can range from $5,000 to $50,000 per year depending on the university and the course. Now the average rate is estimated to be around about $33,000 per year. Now these fees do not include accommodation, bills, books or resources. So that means your average debt just for the fees alone after studying for a typical 4-year degree is around about $132,000. So it will cost more for a student to study outside of their home state than to study in-state, as you would expect. Okay, so our next task here, what we're looking to do is fill in the table on page 23 using the graph to help you and think about what does this show us. So you've got inequality in education and you've got educational attainment in the USA. Degree educated by group in the USA. So you're looking at this graph here and thinking about what is the levels of education for ethnic groups and what is the levels of education for men and women. You'll see here based on ethnic groups that ultimately it is whites that are more likely to get a degree as opposed to blacks, and Latinos and men and women are quite even in the USA when it comes to that. So you're looking to pause video at this point and complete the activity on page 23. So activity 2, now there are huge inequalities in the American school system, as we just discussed. Now what you're looking to do is to watch the full movie trailer and try to identify as many inequalities as you can from the movie trailer. Now this movie trailer is actually from the School of Rock, which you may have seen before from Jack Black, but have a look obviously at what type of school he's working in. Think about some of the inequalities that you actually see in the American school system from this trailer. Okay, activity number 3. What I'd like you to do is just to watch this short documentary. It only lasts about 8 minutes from BBC News about educational inequalities in the USA. And again, try to take some detailed notes on the inequalities faced in terms of education. Okay, next activity, activity number 4. You're looking to take the hen in your drawer, which is inequality in education. So you're looking to explain which groups are more likely to suffer inequality in education. What evidence is there to back up your answer for question 2? And question 4, why do you think there are so many issues with education in America? What do you think could be done to solve the inequalities that exist? So again, if you want to pause the video at this point, you're looking to use the pages in your booklet to complete activity 4. Okay, to finish today, the last task that I'd like you to do, you've got a short documentary to watch now. Now this documentary lasts around about 55 minutes. You don't need to watch it all in one sitting, but it's definitely good for you to watch just for you to see the inequalities that do exist in the school education system. So I've set here to try and take notes on the issues you see facing Americans, particularly African Americans, in a school in the South. Now this is part of a series, but this episode here focuses on segregated America school in the South. So just as certain students are about to graduate from their schools, you'll see that the issues that they are facing and the challenges that they face. You're looking to take notes on this in your jotters. Okay, so what you're looking to upload via Teams, activity 1 on economic inequalities, so your answers to that, and then activity 2, 3 and 4 on educational inequalities. Again, if you've got any questions at all about anything discussed in this lesson, then please just let myself or Miss McAnally know. Thank you very much.